Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Absolute Football Podcast, Women in Football series, which is in partnership with the amazing campaign that is Her Game Too. It is our 7th episode of our Women in Football series. I mean, that has flown by. It's been a brilliant one, hasn't it, Ben?
Oh, no, I think it's going by far too quickly now, isn't it? But we've still got a long list of people we're trying to get on, though, aren't they? But no, we're absolutely
I know.
looking at our guest on tonight, though, aren't we?
It's so exciting. And obviously, before we do introduce our very special guest, how are you? How's your week been? I mean, you had a lovely break over the weekend, didn't you? How was that?
Yeah, I was quite glad to be away from football, to be perfectly honest, as I did have a little listen to the show the other night, and so I know you guys were feeling for me a little bit, but don't. But no, it was nice to have a little fresh for my mates in Stag Do. Nice bit of golf for a couple of days in Portugal. Never been there before, so yeah, not felt a little bit more fresh. Got a little bit of a tan and a few burns along the way, of course, as I always do. But no, how are you, Shah? How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good at the moment. Can't complain. Obviously, Rochdale are doing really well at the moment, so that's always a positive when your football team's doing well. But I'm excited for this episode, and finally, we can introduce our very, very special guest. Somebody that we are honestly incredibly happy to have on the show. It is presenter, reporter, and producer Gabriella Jukes. How are you, Gabriella? And also, thank you so much for coming on and giving up your time this evening to talk to us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure, and I'm very well, thank you. I'm excited to chat to you both, and it's an honour, honestly, to be asked to be a part of this series.
Oh, thank you so much. First question, though, we're going to take it back right to the start. Where did your love for football actually begin, and do you remember your earliest football memory? I love asking this question.
Do you know what? As long as I can remember, I've always loved football and loved sport, like in general. And there's a photo of me. I must be only a few months old with a West Ham United shirt on, when I was a baby. So it's always been a part of my life, and something I've just always had an interest in. Whether that's playing on the schoolyard, with mainly the boys. Obviously, there was no like girls teams or anything like that to play, but I've always had an interest in it. And I'd say that's probably my earliest memory of being a part of some sort of football.
Yes.
Wearing that West Ham United shirt as a baby, and it's just gone from there. To be honest, it's just always been a constant thing, kind of in my life.
Oh, I love that. Obviously, you have mentioned West Ham. Was there a specific player or team that made you fall in love with football?
I wouldn't say there's probably a specific one, but
Yeah.
there's probably no doubt that West Ham probably did have a massive part. And people are always shocked when I say that, because obviously I'm from South Wales. So I was like, why on earth did you? Where's that association with West Ham come from? And I don't really know myself. It's just forced from birth from my dad. So that's always been there. But I just always used to get taken to watch games, growing up as well. Especially the Swans was another one, Swansea City. I'd get taken because there was the closest club sort of to me on that level. So I'd always get taken to watch the Swans, most weekends, to be honest. And it's just always been something that I've kind of been a part of and felt sort of affinity to, no matter where. I mean, I even remember it in school, everyone kind of knew I liked football, and the boys would always test me, when I used to collect all the sticker books, like, go on then, name everyone in the West Ham squad then, go on. And I just always remember that, when I was little. So probably, I know people hate saying that you support two teams, isn't it? People don't like that, but yeah, kind of those two were probably where it all kind of started for me, and obviously the Welsh team as well.
Love that. Then again, people say about supporting two teams, but at the same time, it can be hard sometimes because obviously it's like with me, like I'm a Rochdale fan through and through. But then obviously, like, there's people in my family who have like they're like Manchester. It's really funny in my family because there's Rochdale, Bury fans, and then there's United and City fans. So obviously it's a good mix. But it's one of them where you do kind of follow family and friends results at the same time. It's like on our podcast, Ben, we follow everybody's results as well. So
Yeah.
There's like eight teams I'm keeping an eye on now every week. It's hard to keep up with everyone now.
You've got Chelsea and Maidstone as well, haven't you, Ben?
I know, 2 disappointments over the weekend, so
Oh.
I need something else. Like I've just forgot what winning feels like now these days.
Yes, I can say the same about West Ham at the minute as well.
That's true, very true.
You know it's bad when Rochdale's the best team at the minute,
I
aren't
know.
we, lot?
Fair play, doing really well at the minute.
Thank you. Did football play a big role in your family and community growing up then as well?
Yeah, definitely. I know, like, growing up, my grandfather was a massive part of football. He was a referee for a while as well. So that's always been there. My brother played it. He's younger than me, but as a young child, I'd go every Saturday to watch him play football. And like my father as well. I'd always, be constantly watching, Match of the Day, or one of my earliest memories as well. Actually, when you mentioned it just now, but was watching the World Cup where Zinedine Zidane did the headbutt. I vividly remember watching that as a child in the living room. That's one thing that probably one of my earliest ones in terms of watching like a big event like that.
Yeah.
I was quite young, but I do remember that vividly. So it's always been a constant thing, Match of the Day, and those sort of things, and the teletext, getting the scores up on the teletext back in the day. So I'd say it's always been a part of my family in some way. And again being taken to watch teams like the Swans, or even my local team, Port Talbot Town as well. I used to go and watch them when I was little. So yeah, I'd say it's always been in my life, and it's definitely had an impact on me, and it's always stuck in my head, wanting to be a part of it somehow. And the fact that I've now been able to work in it is just incredible. I'm so lucky.
It's quite funny actually, because the Zinedine Zidane thing, I remember doing the same and turning around to, I think it was my mum and my stepdad at the time, and I was like, this doesn't happen in football, does it? It's like watching WWE. I got really shocked by it.
Yeah, I know, it's such an iconic footballing moment, regardless, isn't it? Even though it shouldn't happen, but it's an iconic moment, definitely.
I mean, for yourself, obviously, like, growing up, you sort of come in sort of a different era where sort of male football's becoming a little more popular for women. But like when you sort of as a kid, really, did you feel like there was enough role models for girls who absolutely love football like yourself?
Probably not at all, to be honest. I didn't even know it existed growing up. Because like I know I didn't play it. There was no girls' teams in my area or anything. Even in school, we weren't allowed to have a team, even though I played, with the boys on the schoolyard, and I'd always like after school go to my grandparents and play outside there. But there wasn't that opportunity, so I never even thought that Wales women was a thing, or a women's football really, until I was a little bit older, and then you start to hear the names like Jess Fishlock and that sort of era. But I'd say growing up, never even had a thought about women's football, to be honest with you, because it just wasn't shown anywhere or anything like that really. I think you'd hear sort of the FA Cup finals perhaps, but other than that, there's nobody that I kind of knew of from a young age, so it was always like men's teams, and that's the main thing you'd watch, wouldn't it, on TV, and that's what you'd kind of keep up with. So looking back, it just wasn't a thing, unfortunately, and it's crazy to see how much is kind of grown and exploded, in the last few years as well.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, because like I think you probably grew up in sort of similar era to me. I mean, I always used to see the women's football sort of come on the TV on Channel 4 and that, like when it was the World Cup or Euros came along.
Yeah.
But I don't think for me it was until sort of, I think it was when I think it was the World Cup in Canada. I think that's probably the first time I thought, oh, this is actually bigger on a bigger scale, because obviously we know how big the game is out in sort of North America, and obviously it's sort of transferred now to this part of the country.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Like it wasn't even something that I think, even if to be honest with you, when it was on TV or you'd see it, it wasn't something I even really noticed. I just think it's because it wasn't something we saw all the time. They maybe show like those big events like the World Cup or so on, but only the big events they would show. They wouldn't take interest in anything else and underneath that. So it just wasn't a common thing that you could really keep up with. As a fan, anyway, there was nowhere to follow them other than actually go into to watch them play, which would sometimes be a park or something like that. It would never be a stadium. So and it's crazy, isn't it, to see like the drastic change that's been made over the last decade. Probably is when it started really kind of picking up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously we touched on sort of, the club you've sort of followed, obviously been Swansea and everything, but I think you've got quite a big connection, haven't you, to the Wales national team? Like, sort of, how do you find it? Because obviously everyone doesn't really take international football so well, but I think when we saw with Wales when they got to the Euro semi-final, we saw the potential of what the country had. I mean, I guess that's probably a highlight for you. But sort of how does that come about? Are you more passionate about your country rather than club, or is it the other way around?
No, I definitely would say I'm definitely more passionate about sport in Wales and international football. I remember my first game going to, well, this is the one I actually remember. My mother told me that I'd been to other games beforehand, but this is the only one that I can vividly remember. It was at Swansea, actually, in the Swansea.com stadium. It was the Liberty Stadium at the time, but it was in 2006, and I think it was against Germany or Belgium. It was either Germany or Belgium, but that's the game that I vividly remember going to watch, and there was the players that, Ryan Giggs was involved in, like Bellamy and all that sort of era. And then I guess for a few years, again, because the team probably weren't doing too great back then, it wasn't something I kind of kept up with. It was more club back then. And then probably, like you said, like 2016 was probably a massive turning point in Welsh football. Seeing them at the Euros and doing so well that nobody ever expected, that to happen, kind of draw the attention of so many people. And then I'd say, yeah, it's just definitely been like a passion of mine, particularly since working more in football as well. I don't think I've missed a game since after COVID. A home game anyway. So I'd definitely say I'm more passionate about supporting Welsh football, and I think anyone who knows me knows how much I love being Welsh, and I've even got a bucket hat. Probably you can see behind me. There's a bucket hat.
I love it.
But, having experienced over the last few years the growth of Welsh football and being a part of that, and from qualifying to the World Cup, which was such an incredible time for Welsh football, and now the women qualifying for the first ever international tournament with the Euros this year. I'd say, in terms of like sport in Wales, football's massively taken over any other sport. So I'm definitely more of, although obviously I love supporting the clubs as well, but I'm definitely more of an international football fan, I'd say, at the moment.
Yeah, I would sort of agree with that actually, because I always remember the game against Belgium, obviously where they came and won 3-1. And even now, even as an English fan, I get goosebumps every time I watch Sam Vokes, head that third goal in, and you just see the supporters jumping all over each other and that. Like, for me at the time, I didn't feel like you'd ever get that with England, but like when you saw it was a completely together squad, and obviously Chris Coleman, was phenomenal in all that, and obviously did a great job, obviously, after Gary Speed, and I think that sort of set the tone, hasn't it? Really, they've sort of gone on from there now, and sort of built their own history, haven't they?
Oh, definitely. And I think there's just been such a roller coaster, over the years. So many managers coming in and out, and then obviously, with Gary Speed, he completely changed the landscape of Welsh football, bringing all those younger players in, and Brian Flynn as well, who's another person who had such an influence on Welsh football, I'd say, in bringing those younger people in, like Gareth Bale, and there's a good documentary called Together Stronger that was out. I think it was from the time of the World Cup, explaining the story of the team and how they've kind of got to where they are. But that 2016 tournament was such a turning point, and you've seen the influence of it from there, and it's just phenomenal to see the growth compared to like when I was younger. The Welsh team, I remember listening on the radio and they'd be like, oh, Wales failed to qualify again. And that would just seem to be a constant thing. There was kind of no expectation, I guess, back then, really, because we weren't used to being successful at all. But now I think it's completely changed. Like, there's an expectation to qualify for a tournament. And, when we didn't qualify for the last Euros, that was devastating. Being in the stadium for that as well, when it came down to penalties against Poland. That was horrible. After qualifying in for the Euros beforehand and then the World Cup, there's that expectation now to succeed and do well, and obviously the World Cup qualifying campaign at the minute as well, which is, I think that's what's changed, is there is an expectation for Wales to do well, whereas before it was no one really cared as much, I guess, because it wasn't a thing that we were used to.
Yeah, exactly. We obviously sort of mentioned about the fact that, you were quite keen on playing football when you were at school, obviously with the lads and everything like that. Was there sort of ever a position you always found yourself in? Was there any sort of position you actually enjoyed playing?
Not particularly, to be honest. We used to just play rather than play like matches and things like that. It'd just be like games, rather like
Love
corners.
that.
We played a game called
Yeah.
Corners,
Love
where we'd
that.
all stand, in the box, and then someone would just you try and header it in and things like that, or I just play random games. So I would never say I played a particular position. I would have probably loved to be like a striker up front or like on the wing. I was quite fast, I'd say, when I was younger because I was quite athletic. So I'd do athletics and sprinting and things like that. So I'd like to think I had some pace, but no, unfortunately, didn't actually get to play anything, and now I'm useless. I can't football, so unfortunately, that was never my route in it. But luckily, I found a way to be a part of it regardless.
How has your relationship obviously changed in football from being a fan and working now in it professionally? Has it changed or do you enjoy it more?
I'd probably say I enjoy it more.
Yeah.
More so because like I get to experience many different
Yeah.
games, different matches, and obviously you're meant to be impartial in sort of working in it, which can be hard sometimes. But I say I definitely enjoy it more, and I'm like more invested in other teams, especially when it comes to like Welsh football. Obviously, like, I have a love for Swansea City, and obviously there's big rivalries like with Cardiff, but then the likes of Wrexham and things doing so well at the minute. I feel like I can appreciate some football more as a working in it because I'm seeing so many different games and all these different stories coming out of football, and I just love watching it regardless. So it doesn't matter what team is playing. I'm kind of quite neutral in that way, I think. I can appreciate what's kind of happening and what's going on, even though my teams may not be doing as well. But I think that's kind of I probably enjoy it much more, kind of working in it. But then even the times where I'm not working, I still go to the games. So
Love that.
I think that's what is kind of stuck in me now. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Kind of linked to it as well. How does being a fan of the game help you connect with not only the players but the audience that you are trying to reach through your work?
That's a good question, to be honest. I think it's more because you kind of know how the fans are feeling.
Yeah.
So, like, part of my
Mm.
work is on weekends I work for BBC Sport on a show called Squad Goals. So it's like a radio show every Saturday covering all the EFL, and part of my role is kind of bringing in like fan reaction and things like that. And I think, I kind of treat it as like how would I react to things, and then that's how I know if that will do well, on the show because I know how to kind of chat to them about it, and rather than treat it as obviously it's work, but we kind of treat it as like we're friends and
Yeah.
just chatting about football in like a pub or something. So I feel like I think ultimately though everyone who works in football is a fan as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it kind of helps you kind of see the other picture, the other side of it, and kind of even when you're interviewing people, you kind of know what the fans want to hear from that interview. So that's why I think it makes it a little bit easier if you genuinely just love football as a fan as well. You kind of know what you're trying to get out of it because you know what the fans will like or they relate to as well. You kind of try and be like relatable. I think is a really important thing when it comes to working in that side of things.
I love
Mm.
squad goals as well.
Oh,
I do
good,
love it.
good, yeah.
Honestly, it's one of my favourites.
Oh, good. It's a bit of fun. It's good. I really enjoy it, and the team are great, and it's always great fun every weekend. It's a 4-hour show, so it's a long one, but it's I always come out of it, like beaming. It's a good laugh, so
Love
I
that.
really enjoy it.
Love that.
I mean, I think we've sort of taken it back a little bit, I guess, sort of following on that because, you've obviously transformed in the fan, obviously into a career, which is what so many people want to do. What sort of inspired you to get into sort of sports broadcasting and presenting?
To be honest, it was something I've always wanted to do. I've always wanted to work in sport in some way, but growing up, I didn't think, working in sports media, particularly probably as a woman, like there had no connection, other than a love for the sport. I didn't think that was something that was possible. So I actually went down the route of doing sports science originally. So I have a degree in sports science. And my thoughts were, if you want to work in sport, you have to be a physiotherapist or a sport teacher or along the lines of that. I didn't think there was like another avenue for me to go down. Other than like, I suppose when you look at it, like the likes of Gabby Logan, obviously the most incredible broadcaster, but you see like, her dad worked in football, so you thought the only way I could do it was if I knew someone. So that was kind of off the cards for me. And actually, I was looking the other week and I came across some messages with a cousin of mine when I was in school. I must have been in about year 9 before even picking my GCSEs. And in the messages, I said, "Oh, I want to work in sport media." And she asked me what were my plans. And when I came across that the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, like I found it crazy because I knew like back then I thought of it, but I actually told someone that was like a thing that I wanted to do, but just never even thought that was possible. And so I did the sports science course, graduated, and then quickly realised when I got offered a job as a physiotherapist, and I thought, absolutely, I don't know what I'm doing. That's not, why am I like even going down this route when I knew like that was definitely not what I wanted to do. So I took a little bit of a break away from kind of education, and then I started working, like doing bits of like modelling and things like that, which were sort of tied into media, I guess. And I used to model on a show called Prynhawn Da, which is a Welsh sort of version of This Morning. So I used to do a bit of modelling on there, and I was always like fascinated by the cameras, like how things worked, and watching the presenters and all of that side of stuff. So that was kind of something I was really interested in. And then I did Miss Wales, so I represented Wales at Miss World, which was an incredible experience. But that kind of really gave me like belief that I could actually really like do anything, that I set my mind to. So then during that time, it was around 2020, I applied to go back to university to do a master's in sports broadcasting. And I found that course in Cardiff Met, purely because someone I grew up with, which would be Shauna David, which you may have heard of. She, amazing presenter, presents all the Welsh football coverage for the Welsh language channels, and also does a bit of Sky Sports now. But I saw that she did this course and she was doing really well, and I thought, wow, like that's amazing. So I just give it a go, and then kind of took off from there. To be honest, the best thing I ever did was go back and do that course, and I just loved it, and it just kind of went from there.
And how did sort of being Welsh and bilingual shape up sort of your career in football? Was it any different at all?
I think the Welsh side of it. In Wales, like it's quite a small industry, I'd say, the sports media, sports football industry. And I think I speak Welsh. So that kind of really opened so many doors for me. When I was at university, I was the only female that spoke Welsh on the course. So whenever any opportunities came in, luckily they gave me those opportunities, and that was being a pitch side reporter for the show Sgorio, which is on S4C, the Welsh language channel. I managed to go and cover some of the women's football games, which was fantastic experience. Being at university and getting that opportunity to do live TV as a pitch side reporter was just another level. And through that as well, I got to work then with Swans TV, and obviously growing up watching the Swans, and then eventually presenting their coverage for match day was just, again, blows my mind looking back at it. But it was such an incredible opportunity, and the majority of my work is probably Welsh football. I know I work a lot now with the FAW at events or on the digital content and things like that, and I present their cup draws. So I think being a Welsh presenter is a massive part of my identity in what I do, and particularly now within Welsh football. And I probably wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest. I just love it, and to be able to represent Wales on a bigger scale as well is something I'll always be proud of.
You've told us obviously about your journey and how obviously you became what you are now, and honestly you're incredible, the work that you do, and you are actually someone I really look up to.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Was there a particular moment where you thought, wow, this is really happening?
Yeah, gosh, there's probably many of them. Probably one particular one would be the Swans TV thing. I think that was like massive for me at the time. when I got asked to do that, I'd never had experience, to be honest, presenting anything live like that, other than a university TV. So that was massive for me, knowing that the Swans have such a big following, and so many people watched the live stream of that. It was just bizarre. And I think because growing up, as I was saying, I'd go and watch the Swans. I'd even wait outside the stadium to have photos of the players and things like that. So I've got photos of me with some of the players, and then I turned to Swans TV, and then I was working with them. So one of the players I remember having a real pinch me moment was Angel Rangel. I'm not sure if you remember
a player.
Swans. Yeah, player.
It was always in my fantasy team.
And he's still very much involved with the Swans and everything now, and he still lives quite local. But I remember he was the guest on the show that day, and I just couldn't believe it, because he's one of the players I'd watch, and I have photos of him when I was about 14 years old, outside the stadium. So I think for me, that was probably one of the moments I thought, this is real now. I'm actually doing this as a job as well. I just couldn't believe it. And the Sun newspaper got hold of it as well and did an article, and then I was oh my gosh, this is bizarre. For me, that would probably be one of the turning points in my career as well, I'd say, getting that opportunity to do that. And then people would see you at the stadium and become a familiar face. So that was a real turning point in my career, and I learned so much as well. I wouldn't say I was amazing at the job either, because it was straight out of university, but I'm so grateful I got that that chance to do that for that season, and pitch side as well, in some iconic games when Swansea beat Cardiff, Southfield's derby and things like that. It was just probably one of those moments that I thought, wow, this is amazing. And then since then, I've been so lucky to have so many incredible experiences within football, whether that's in front of the camera or behind as well, as a producer as well now, which I really love doing. So I'm incredibly grateful for those opportunities.
I feel really bad now because I'm going on to a bit of a negative question. What would you say, though, has been your biggest challenge in football media so far, if you have had any?
No, it definitely been challenges, of course. I think it comes with just being a woman in the space as well, doesn't it? But I'm lucky that I've had so many, males in the industry support me and give me opportunities, which is brilliant. And they've not treated me any different. But of course, there are comments that people would make, and one actually example I mentioned, it was that Sun newspaper article that came out when I got the job at the Swans, was all about me, how I looked, and pictures of me in my bikini and things like that. And I think the content, the written content of that article was actually really positive. And and they said some nice things about me and my career and my background. But then when it came to it, the headline was something like Welsh Rabbit becomes new Swans TV presenter or something like that. It wasn't very good. But the way they put those images in off my Instagram with me on holidays and things, which is absolutely nothing to do with being the presenter of a football team. So that was probably the challenge, is trying to get that perception maybe away from people, and hopefully I've proved it wrong. And it even comes on comments on Facebook. I have a cousin who is a bit older, but he always comments about women's football quite negatively, but I'm always the first one to comment back on that. And you can see me coming now, so he kind of stopped doing it. But I guess that is probably the challenge, is changing perceptions, isn't it? And but overall, it's been highly positive. And like I said, there's so many people in the industry that have supported and given me so many opportunities that I'll always be grateful for that. But I think it just comes, unfortunately, with kind of being it is a male-dominated industry, isn't it? Still very much.
Don't worry, I'm going to try and move it back to a bit more positivity.
I know, I feel really bad now.
I guess that's the nature of it, though, isn't it? It's the real side of it. So.
Should have gave that question to you, Ben.
Yeah, you should have done. I'm the one that always give the negative news, aren't I, to be fair? But you mentioned sort of a few people that you sort of looked up to. I mean, obviously, it's funny you mentioned Gabby Logan, because we had Gabby Laron, who works at Morecambe. We had her on the other week, and she talked about her being a big role model. And was it just her, or was there anyone else along the way that you sort of looked up to? Or was there any mentors, when you were at university that really helped you along the way to where you've got to now?
Oh, there's definitely so many, I'd say. Growing up, Sarah Elgan she's a rugby presenter, but her mother was my headmistress when I was in primary school. So she is someone that I always kind of followed her career, and obviously she presents Premiership rugby and everything rugby based. But I'd always kind of followed her career and someone I'd really, really looked up to, and being Welsh as well. Seeing someone, go to that kind of level, and she's brilliant. She's amazing at what she does. So she was definitely someone that I really looked up to growing up. But obviously Gabby Logan, because of, I think, the way she just does it with ease and presents all sports as well. Just like she is not just football, she'll do a bit of rugby, but the athletics and everything. She probably could do them all. But I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. But in terms of kind of, like you said, mentorship, but when I was at university, I did start a podcast, which was called She Has a Goal in Mind, which was all about celebrating women in sport. So we'd have women come on there and chat to us about their careers and, trying to inspire kind of the next generation. And because I think when I was like younger and studying then on the course, there wasn't anywhere I could go to look for kind of inspiration. So I thought it would be a good idea to try to interview the people myself and like hopefully provide that for someone else. And when I was saying about getting that opportunity on Swans TV, it was kind of through that podcast where we interviewed Rebecca Edwards-Simmons, who worked at the Swans at the time. And she's now actually head of Team Wales for the Commonwealth Games. So she's like a real powerhouse, I'd say, in sport. But she gave me that opportunity at Swans TV. So, having people like that in the space that kind of have your back and see something perhaps in you and give you those opportunities is amazing. We're all about women supporting women, and there's plenty of that, I'd say, particularly in Wales, because again, it's such a small industry here. Everyone knows everyone working in it, in football, and kind of all the sports kind of interlink. I think I'd say in terms of people working on them. So there's been plenty of people that I kind of looked up to and that have helped giving me, opportunities and advice as well. There's always people there to kind of speak to for advice. And I have to shout another one actually just popped to my head because there are so many. There's Kerry from a company called Ban Media. Earlier this year, gave me an incredible opportunity to produce a documentary for the BBC about the history of the Wales women's team qualifying for their first ever major tournament. And he was on BBC Wales, he was on BBC Network as well in the summer. And again, I hadn't really had that experience before on that level. I produced stuff for like the FAW and for other sort of organizations, but to have been trusted and given that opportunity to be like the producer for this mega documentary, I'm incredibly grateful for her. And like she gave me a message and asked if it was something that I'd be kind of interested in. So there's so many, in the industry that kind of stick by you and give you those chances.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we sort of talk about, like I said, the passion, obviously, that the Welsh, have sort of got now for football. I think that I say it's definitely evolved. And obviously, we know that obviously they've got the big, love for rugby. Obviously, we know that, they're mad about the Six Nations, obviously the World Cup when that comes along. But I was thinking, you've worked in so many sort of different sports, but like sort of what makes football unique for you?
I really don't know, to be honest with you. I've been trying to think about this the last couple of months because when I first joined that course at university, it was actually rugby that I said that I wanted to work in. And I don't know why, looking back, why that was like the case. Because I've done a bit of work in rugby, obviously, as well. I work a lot with rugby now in terms of content producing rather than like kind of presenting it. And I worked with the Ospreys rugby team a lot, doing some content for them. But I've kind of just, I guess, fallen into the space of working in Welsh football, but there's just something about it. I don't know what it is. Like it's like a real community feel, and we have like obviously the red wall is what we call the Welsh fans. There's just something about football for me that I just have an affinity to. I don't know what it is about it, but I couldn't see myself never working in it. As much as I love also trying other sports as well. I worked a tiny bit doing some presenting for netball and cricket. I did the 100 a couple of years back as well. But for some reason, football has always been there. And I don't know. I couldn't answer why it makes it so unique, but maybe it's just kind of like the belonging and the fandom that comes with it. Because I feel like rugby fans perhaps aren't as passionate, maybe, other than like when it comes to international rugby or something. I feel like at club level is just not the same, particularly in Wales anyway. It just doesn't have the same kind of feel as football.
I know you mentioned as well, obviously, before about sports science, physiotherapy, but if you wasn't broadcasting right now in football, is there another job in football that you would love to have?
Oh, that's such a good question. What would I do if I weren't doing this? It would probably end up being a physiotherapist,
Yeah.
probably. If I've got something to fall back on, I suppose. Not that I probably don't even remember anything to do with it now. Mind, it's been a while, because it was like 2018 I graduated from doing that. But I probably I'd have to work in it in some way, so I'd find a way regardless, I think.
Something obviously myself and Ben are really, really passionate about is lower league football, whether it's obviously National League North and South, or the EFL leagues. And it's something you are really, really familiar with. You have been covering a lot of EFL football for a while now. What do you enjoy most about working on the lower leagues?
I absolutely love it. I think it's, again, the passion of the fans for me is
Yeah.
just like another level completely. And it's like, more likely you don't see your teams doing well week in, week out or anything, but the way the fans kind of just stick in there. And I think it's amazing to watch as well. Like
Yeah.
it's so good. Like, and anything can happen. It's so unpredictable. I think that's one thing with like the EFL. It's so unpredictable. Week in, week out. Even on the show when we're doing squad goals, we have our predictions and like we pick out games of the day and things like that. But things never kind of go
No.
out as you think they're going to go. And that's why I love it as well, because like, again, there's so many, like, I'm all about kind of storytelling as well. I feel like there's so many amazing stories coming from the lower leagues, and whether that's particularly like in the national leagues as well, like a manager that maybe not be full-time and they have a job on the side, and then particularly when it comes to like the FA Cup and things like that, and you see the lower league teams come into it, and they just give it their all regardless. They may be working two jobs and or just playing football, and I just love that sort of side of it and how like down to earth kind of is as well. And I just love that. And again, like, yeah, the passion of the fans for me is what kind of makes football. I think football would be obviously nothing without kind of the fans, and then the interaction and sort of that, and the chants, like that side of it as well. They chant about absolutely anything, isn't it? Football fans,
Yeah.
like, thing to sing about. So I just feel like there's just nothing like it.
Yeah, I think like you're right. I think that sort of leads me, to be fair, on to the next question for me. Really, it's like, you've got so many big clubs outside of the Premier League, historic ones that were big champions back in 60s and 70s are probably the most popular ones. You've got very small clubs that have worked their way through the leagues. I mean, how do you sort of approach telling stories that sort of resonate across that spectrum?
I think it's all about kind of that relatability, like I was saying, is like, if you're a normal fan in your work, I'm trying to think of an example, but there was a manager in recent years that was managing a club that was actually doing quite well, and I think they got promoted to maybe League Two, and the manager had to quit their full-time job to kind of go into managing full-time, and it was the first time kind of they'd had that experience. I can't remember what manager it was, but I remember reading that myself thinking, like, that's just so inspirational, isn't it? Like, the people that give their all to the game regardless. And one thing as well, like on the weekend, I presented an awards due for the FAW, which was the Grassroots Awards, which is a big night for them in the calendar, and it's all about celebrating those coaches and volunteers that are involved in the game, and kind of, I think that's what makes it beautiful, is like those people that just give their all because they love it so much, and the stories of like when there's like family playing in a team or playing against each other, and things like that. I just love that sort of relatability side of it. That just makes it sort of so real. I think that's what makes it for me, is finding those little bits of stories, and things like that. And anything for me as well that's got a Welsh connection. I love
that.
I always try and find that.
I love that.
I mean, that's because you probably had a lot of privilege of sort of covering a lot of EFL games over that time. Like, so I think a lot of people tend to love the EFL probably more than the Premier League just because of like it's all win at all costs and everything like that. But what's sort of the most memorable match you've covered, and sort of why? Why would you pick that one?
Oh, I'd say probably in terms of me like being there physically, probably in terms of club football would be when Swansea played Cardiff at the Swansea.com stadium, and I think it was 3-0 Swansea won, and I was pitch side for that on Swansea TV, and it was actually the first time I'd experienced a South Wales derby in person, because it's just chaos, like you go into those, but the experience of it and the atmosphere there was just something like unbelievable. So that was amazing, getting to see that. But in terms of like international football was when Wales qualified for the World Cup. A few years ago now, wasn't it? So it would have been 2021 time, maybe 2021 perhaps, early 2022. But I was there for that, and that was just phenomenal. I think everyone was crying, and and I was lucky enough to work that game as well. I worked it as part of the FAW's show FC Cymru, and we did a live stream for that. And that was the most phenomenal game probably I've ever been witnessed, or just in terms of the atmosphere and what it meant, was incredible.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think I remember that game because obviously, like, it was a massive, like, sort of atmosphere. Like, like I said, I think because it was 64 years, wasn't it, that they'd waited to get to the World Cup.
64 years.
And sometimes, like we see, like in the major tournaments of international football, the atmosphere is so much more passionate. Everyone goes mental. Obviously, when the Euros come around for England, like everyone throws everything down and watches the games and that. But like, how does sort of like an EFL game like compare, atmosphere wise in comparison to like international games and Premier League matches for you?
I think it depends on kind of what game it is, because I feel like, unfortunately, at the minute, the likes of the local games like Swansea, Cardiff, and that there's just the fans just don't seem to be coming out in support, and obviously that's probably due to results over the years maybe haven't been the way. Obviously Cardiff getting relegated probably didn't help their case as well, but I remember watching there was like highlights game of the Swans in recent weeks, and the stadium just looked empty, and I just thought, what's going on? But you see, a lot of lower league clubs fill in a stadium constantly, but it's just, I think at the minute, other than the likes of Wrexham will probably sell out the stadium constantly, in terms of like the Welsh side of it, there just doesn't seem to be that kind of support at the minute, and hopefully they'll get a bit better. If even as a Swans kind of supporter, that even with Cardiff, I'd love to see them in the same league as Swansea and Wrexham. I think it'd be amazing to have them all in that same league, and it's only good for Welsh football as well, I think. But international football now at the minute is another level, I think, especially with Wales. I just honestly can't wait every time the games are announced. I've got my tickets ready for the Belgium game in a couple of weeks' time. I can't wait to go, because I just know the atmosphere is going to be amazing. And even with the women's sort of football as well, I was lucky enough to go to Switzerland for the Women's Euros, and obviously the Welsh results wasn't what we'd hoped, but that experience to be a part of that, and there were so many Welsh fans out there as well, supporting, and regardless, the stadiums were bouncing, and I just feel like international football at the minute for me is just incredible to be part of. And obviously I love the EFL, I love working in it every week, and I can never wait for it to come back in the summertime. But for some reason, I haven't been able to go to an EFL game for a long time, just because obviously I work in it, so it's really difficult to go to them. But Welsh football for me is where it's at the minute in terms of going to games as well.
One thing I'm really interested to know, and honestly, I can't wait for the answer of this, and I'm hoping it's a really random one, but has there been a moment where a game's been so unpredictable, it's caught you live on air, where you thought, wow, what's happened? Or on squad goals where something random's happened? Has anything taken you by surprise?
It's probably on squad goals, to be fair, because like I'm always like preparing, reactions from fans, and then
Yeah.
I'll tell the guys, right, I've got something ready to say, and as I'm about to say it, there's been a goal that's happened again. I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's always chaos anyway on there because again it's so unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. There was a game recently. I can't remember off the top of my head what game it was now. But usually, there's a goal like in the last minute or something like that, and it's just chaos, isn't it? I can't think of an example, to be honest with you, like off the top of my head, of a specific one. There's been so many of them, particularly on squad goals, though, because you can imagine I'm in my 4th season now on squad goals. So over the years, there's definitely been a lot of shocks and chaos going on there. Particularly cup games as well. You can always see like in a cup game, there's always that happening, isn't there?
Definitely. It's always the lower league ones as well
Yeah.
against the Premier League, like the underdogs. I mean, you know that, Ben, don't you? Obviously, with Maidstone's journey.
Yeah.
Not that recently, hasn't it?
Yes, 100%. No, I didn't want to bring it up at any point, Shard, but now you've mentioned it.
I thought I'd bring something a bit more positive because it's not good at the minute, is it, Ben, for you?
Never going to happen again, though.
One question I'm really intrigued to know as well. Do you find fans in the EFL have that more of a community kind of feeling and they're more passionate, or they're more connected to the players?
Yeah, I'd say so. I think it's more what's the word, like attainable to, like in the Premier League, I feel like the players are off limits completely.
Yeah.
So, but in terms of like the EFL, I feel like those that have been supporting that club for a long time get to know the players, in and out, don't they? They feel like they know them really well. And I can see that from kind of the reaction that we get on the show as well. So like they feel like they're friends, become friends with these players.
Yeah.
So I feel like they definitely are so passionate. And I always find it funny, when reactions come in on the show, because like one week you could be having a good week and you win, and then you could be having a good few weeks in a row, to be honest with you, and then it comes to like one week you lose, and then the reactions just change like that. It's quite funny how you see it, developing. It's one negative thing happens and like everyone thinks it's the end of the world, don't they?
Yeah.
Which I love about it, and they do feel like they own the club, don't they? Because they've been, it's their life, some of them as well. That's what they look forward to going to, on weekends and things like that. So definitely I think they're the best fans in the world, the EFL fans.
Is there a particular player that you've either interviewed or you've seen regularly when obviously you've been on squad goals, or when you've been obviously talking about and reporting that you think, do you know what, they could make it in a Premier League or beyond the Premier League?
There's probably a lot, to be honest with you. I'm trying to think on like as in interviewed.
Any.
Okay. At the minute, I would say, so in terms of the Swans at the minute, there was a lot of talks of him leaving actually, but Potnik is doing incredibly well for the Swans, and I could definitely see him playing in the Premier League. Who else? I tell you who I really like as a player is Solver Thomas. I think he's still kind of. I think only now his kind of career is kind of kick-starting maybe a little bit. He's doing phenomenally well, and I can see in a few years that he perhaps would do well in the Premier League as well. And I think he's another one in international level as well. I think he's been a real key player recently for Wales. And that's something I think I'd like to see him play in the Premier League.
Yeah, I always think this is probably one of the biggest challenges, because I mean, I always only go by when I see things like on Soccer Saturday or final scores or the information that the hosts and that always have to get together. How do you sort of prepare differently for like covering a league like the EFL? Because obviously there's so many teams and so many different storylines and so many different contexts of things of where clubs are at the moment. Like how does it sort of compare to just focusing on just one club or even the national team?
It is really hard, I have to say, and like you said, like when you watch it on TV, it just seems like so effortless, like they just know it all, sort of thing. But it takes a team, obviously, to come together to do that. And over the years, I've had to really learn to like kind of broaden my knowledge, and when leading up to a match weekend. So like on Saturday, we'll be doing the show from 2 till 6. I kind of try and listen to like podcasts and things like that over the week, and there's mostly figure out what the key points are that week. The key talking points. Like I said, we have our games of the day on Squad Goals, which is really helps. And I always get to pick a Welsh game of the day, obviously. So I love doing that as well, having that kind of element. But we always kind of pick games that week that kind of stand out, which probably helps in terms of preparing then as well, because we pick one each from like the Championship League 1 and League 2. So 1, 2, 3, about 8 games, I think, in total. We kind of look over. So we look out for them, but obviously then there will be other games that are on that may completely blindside us, and we not expect that game to kind of kick off that week. But you kind of have a general knowledge, and obviously the internet is amazing these days as well. So it's like when you're live on air, and you're trying to like pull something together, and and we all help each other out as well. The guys that I work with on Squad Goals are brilliant. They're so good at what they do, and they're always there for support as well, if needed. But it is so difficult to cover all the 3 leagues, and how many teams there are in there, how many players, how many new players constantly coming in and out as well. Like with the new signings and the transfer windows, especially now, like obviously this just happened, and then come January there'll be the other one. So everything's always constantly changing, trying to keep up with the managers coming in and out, because I think in the EFL there's just something new every week in terms of that. We've already had a few, haven't we, sackings, and a new man just coming in the EFL. Chris Wilder coming back in after only being gone for three months.
I know.
A day. Like there's always something crazy going on. It's never straightforward. But I think that's what I love about it. It's never boring. It's never complacent.
No.
It's always something new to learn. Because when there's no point knowing everything about one team, because that's always going to change the next week probably as well. So but I love the buzz of it, and I think even coming into to Squad Goals, I came into it probably only knowing so much about kind of Welsh football, but I've learned so much over the last 3 or 4 years about the EFL, and that's only made me fall in love with football even more than I already did. It's a tough job, but I love it, and I wouldn't have it any other way. It keeps me on my toes, definitely.
Yeah, I always think as well that the EFL has grown so much, like so much recently because of the amount of coverage. Obviously, so many more live games now coming out on Sky Sports. I mean, what roles do you think that the EFL plays in sort of the development of the women's game in terms of like its visibility, media coverage, or pathways through for people as well?
Oh, definitely. I think kind of all kind of interlinked a lot as well, and particularly with football these days, you see the women's teams becoming like part of a club now. So it's not just like the men's team and then the women's team separate. They treat it as kind of under one branch, and I feel like when one's doing really well, they kind of benefit sort of each other, if that makes sense. But in terms of, like you said, like with it being more visible in terms of working in football and being a woman in football, there's plenty more opportunities now to do so. In terms of like the women's football as well, like that's getting broadcast way more these days, isn't it? And like they have nearly every game broadcast from like the WSL and WSL2 and things on like YouTube. So there's a massive chance to like develop young people coming through in media as well. Particularly, there's so many opportunities now to go to a press box, and I think to be honest with you, like it's so easy now to get press passes and things, and to use that as experience if you're wanting to work in sport media, more so than a couple of years ago. Even there's just so much now you can work in, and I feel like social media has a massive part to play in that as well, doesn't it?
I'm so excited to ask this question because it just makes me laugh. If you could describe EFL football in 3 words, What would those 3 words be?
Oh gosh, I don't know if 3 words are enough. But probably unpredictable
Yes.
would be one. Loyal,
Yeah.
maybe the fans. So loyal, and what's the third one? And bonkers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good word, but yeah, that's what I always think. Every time I come off work on Saturdays, I'm like, that was just nuts.
But you have to have like 5 minutes, like, wow, I need
Yeah.
calm room for a moment.
Yeah,
That was that good.
that's how I feel. Yeah.
Go and sit in a dark room for 5 minutes.
That's usually it, honestly. I come off it and I'm like, oh my gosh, I just can't even think straight. So much has happened.
Obviously, you've mentioned you have worked across both men's and women's football. How have you seen the women's game grow in recent years?
Oh, it's grown massively. Even from working in it, I worked as a pitch side reporter for the FA Player over the years, covering the women's leagues. Usually, it would have been the Championship, but I'd cover the likes of like, Bristol City, Birmingham, Reading. Obviously, unfortunately, they're not there anymore. But in those leagues anyway, but even from starting reporting on those over the years, going from even like Everton, I remember covering an Everton game at one of the training grounds, and it was literally just like it looked like a community centre, and then with the pitch, like, and then now obviously they're in Goodison Park. Like it's just insane to see that growth, and seeing so many fans every year. It's just growing and growing. Even with Bristol City, we cover the games now in Ashton Gate, whereas before it would just be at the Robins training centre. So even just little things like that, as someone who worked in it, I think you don't appreciate it until you look back and see how it was before.
Yeah.
And to see, like with Welsh football as well. I always keep going back to Welsh football, but even like we have the Adran leagues, which is called in Wales. So we have like Swansea City playing it, the Cardiff City playing it. To see that grow, in Wales incredibly is been amazing to see. For them, they get to play at like Swansea.com Stadium and Cardiff City Stadium, and just little things like that. I think it's just incredible to see like the investment, that's been made in it, and the fact now the Welsh women's team have qualified for their first ever major tournament, and we have the players, like Jess Fishlock, Sophie Ingle, and so many more in that team coming through as well, like the younger generation. I just feel like there's no stopping women's football at the minute, in general, whether that's in Wales or obviously with the Lionesses winning the Euros again this year. It's just like on another level. It's just going to get bigger and bigger.
I know we have mentioned a couple previously, but what would you say your proudest moment is working in women's football so far?
Oh, without doubt, would be going to the Euros this summer and seeing Wales kind of on that stage. And I'll never forget kind of that first game against the Netherlands. There was a fan walk before the game, and that was just incredible. Seeing everyone there singing, and all the fans getting along with each other as well from all countries. That was amazing. Then to see the anthem and hear the anthem be played for the first time at a major tournament for Wales was so emotional, and knowing the background and what they've come through to even get to there in the first place, and to be there for work, and to say that I worked at a major tournament like that will always be probably a really proud moment. And it was just an incredible experience. And as I said, regardless of the kind of results on the pitch, those players give everything to that Wales shirt. And especially, like I said, the ones like Sophie Ingle and Jess Fishlock and Kaylee Barton, the ones who have been there from kind of the start when they had absolutely nothing, to see them get that opportunity and to be there in person to witness it as well was something I'm incredibly proud of.
I think you've sort of touched on the fact, like, look, you've sort of had to come right from the bottom, sort of work your way up. I don't think there's anyone would, to be fair. But like, going from sort of grassroots matches and to Wales at the World Cup, what's the difference sort of in atmosphere and pressure when you're working?
Honestly, I think it's all the same. I wouldn't say like, obviously I know when there's like an international game, there's definitely pressure, but I feel like I treat everything I treat it like a grassroots game as if it was the World Cup, because, those people, like I said, that are there, playing, particularly even when I was at university, the teams at university would be playing in the Welsh leagues and at grassroots level. It means so much to them. And I treat every interview as if it is like the star player in the world or whatever, just because I know how much it would mean to them, and you want to do them justice. So I feel like there's definitely pressure regardless, I think, on all levels. Personally anyway, I'm not sure if like everyone would say the same, but I think that's what I would say is, obviously it's a great honour to be able to work at the international levels and like the Premier League levels, or in the WSL levels, but I try and treat it all kind of as equal.
Yeah, I mean, you've probably obviously had the privilege of, obviously along the way of, being to interview some, some big, names and everything like that. Is there any sort of memorable interview with either a player or coach that really stands out to you in your time, in your career so far?
Yeah, I'd probably say a couple, but a couple of years ago made the documentary on Sophie Ingle, about her career, for Chelsea, and for Wales, and that was for the FAW. And I got to interview Emma Hayes, which
amazing.
was a massive highlight for me.
Wow.
And like she just walked in and it was just like it was nothing, and she just sat down and like spoke about, Sophie Ingle, and talked about Sophie's career and her relationship with her, and all that. And I think that's something will always stick out to me, because she's just, an icon, isn't she, Emma Hayes? And that's something I'm really proud of, is having the opportunity to do that. And I was in awe of it, no doubt. But there was like players, including Millie Bright as well, that I got to interview for that, and Sam Kerr as well, which was another one, because obviously we knew like her stardom at that point when I interviewed her. She was probably one of the biggest players in the world at that time. So having that opportunity was incredible. But I'd say definitely, interviewing Emma Hayes is definitely a kind of a pinch me moment, in football. Also, I love interviewing Rhian Wilkinson, the current Wales international manager as well. She's an amazing speaker. So anything she says, you're kind of captivated by her. So probably those two really stands out to me. But again, in terms of like the men's side of football, it's probably the players that like I grew up watching. I was saying, like with the Swans, and like Lee Trundle is another one, who's like a massive EFL footballing icon, isn't he? So again, to interview and work with him as well is another kind of sort of highlight. And more recently, I worked for Soccer Aid this season, as a social media executive. So that again was bizarre, bizarre scenarios there. With the players like Tevez was part of it, and Wayne Rooney, and so many others. To be kind of in the same environment at one time with all of those icons of the game, was just crazy as well. So there are definitely so many highlights, but in terms of the people that stood out with me, kind of interviewing, probably like Emma Hayes, as I mentioned.
Yeah, I'm quite glad that you mentioned it, because you know what, she sort of changed my perception a little bit, sort of in women in football a little bit, because you listen to her and she sort of fits in when obviously she's done it with the men's team. I'm pretty sure she was pundit when England got to the final against Italy, and she had Ian Wright and Roy Keane there, I think. I think I like the way she came across, and her tactics and everything like that, and the way she analyzes games. Like it's quite refreshing to hear. And I think, to be honest, it probably changed a lot of men's opinions in the game. And I think she's a massive part of that, I reckon.
Oh, I definitely agree with you. Like, she's just on another level, I think. And like, regardless of gender, I just think she's one of the best, probably, kind of at what she does. I just think she's amazing. And, again, the passion, the way she speaks. She always says something kind of inspirational as well, I find.
Yeah.
So, I just love that. I'm like, how I need some of that kind of.
She needs a quote book, doesn't she? An inspirational quote book.
Definitely, yeah. I think she's definitely changed the landscape of women's football 100%. And like you said, people's perception maybe of women's football as well, and the success she's had, at Chelsea for all those years, and now obviously with the USA now. But she's just an icon, I think, of the game.
Yeah, so still very early on in your career, of course, but has there been like a live on-air moment that maybe stands out to you that's been funny, nerve-wracking, or unforgettable?
There's probably been plenty of those. I think every time I get to do something live is kind of, unforgettable for me. I'm trying to think if I had any funny moments. I've had some where I've had to kind of, I did a live stream with the FAW when Wales were in the World Cup. We were doing a show called Red Wall on Tour. So I didn't get to go to Qatar, but I was working from back in Wales, and we were traveling around different places in Wales doing this live talk show ahead of a game. And I remember I was still fairly new to it at that time. It was a good few years ago now. But we were in Newport doing a show, and we had Neville Southall, who was like iconic Wales goalkeeper.
Yeah.
We had him on the show, and a few others. And I was on talkback, and the talkback stopped working completely. So I just did not know what was going on or anything. Didn't know how much time was left. Didn't know, what the time was. Nothing like that. So that was probably a part that I was very nervous about. But I just carried on as if I knew what was going on, and it worked out in the end. I think when you watch it back, you hopefully don't notice that anything happened. But all I could see was people waving in front of me like this, as if to say it's broken. That's what's because I was waiting for a queue and nothing was coming through.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? But I could see them all waving in front of the camera just to say it stopped. And someone was saying wrap up. So I was like, oh my god, panic. But hopefully nobody noticed other than everyone else in the room.
When you produce documentaries, as you mentioned, like the Sophie Ingle piece, what makes a story stand out most to you?
I think you've got to have kind of the right person.
Yeah.
If it's a documentary about a person, for example, Sophie does not like attention or anything like that. So I think when we first said we were going to do this, people were saying, "Oh, is that going to work?" Because we know that she doesn't like, talking about herself. She's so humble.
Yeah.
So I think she has such an incredible story, though. She's so inspirational. Everything she's gone through in her career. But I think that to tell the story, you've got to kind of get to know the people, and it's got to be relatable. Again, I think that's always kind of a common theme in terms of making documentaries, and the Welsh football one we did recently with the women's team. I think that's kind of the case there, and also you've got to show kind of the ups and downs as well, because as great as someone's career might be now, there's no doubt that they'd gone through so much ups and downs to kind of get there. And that's something we really tried to get across in the Wales women's documentary, is kind of, yes, it's amazing that they qualified, but you've got to kind of understand everything that came before it, and you've got to get the right contributors and things like that as well to kind of fit, that story. And it always helps when they're good speakers, as well, because it's horrible when you interview someone and you can't get anything out of them. But luckily, the ones I've worked on have been brilliant, and the team, the crew, and everything like that, behind it as well, have been phenomenal. So yeah, you've got to kind of get right in there and get to know the people, I think, and make them feel comfortable, which I'd say, in my experience, they're not going to tell you anything about yourself if they don't feel comfortable kind of around you. And I'd like to think I'm really friendly, and I'm always like to talk to people and find out about them anyway, and hopefully they do feel comfortable there when it comes to kind of being interviewed. And another thing would be the trust because Sophie
of
Haley obviously had to trust me to be able to tell that story of her, because again, she doesn't like being centre stage or having attention, so we needed that trust to speak to her family as well and things like that. So I think that's a massive part, particularly when you're making a documentary about a person or telling their story. I think trust is a massive part of it.
One thing as well, I feel like this question is because I need tips as well, because anytime I'm near someone who's my hero, I either go silent or I'm freeze, or I talk really fast. But how do you manage being a professional broadcaster as well as obviously being a football fan? Because that's one thing with me. Like even a Rochdale player or Desmond the Dragon at this point, I'm like, wow, that's my childhood hero. I can't cope.
No, I am like that, to be honest with you. I'm like that. But I'm like it. I like to think I'm like it silently. So I'll be like, I'll get all of it out beforehand, or
love it.
Or try and hold it in and then afterwards freak out.
That would be me.
Yeah, usually I'm the case, especially with like the soccer aid. Like it's just bizarre, having, obviously the football is there, but then they have like the famous people like Louis Tomlinson from One Direction and, and players like that. But also I try to remember that they are just people as well. I hope try and bring myself down a little bit and be like, they are just normal people just trying to live their life. And afterwards I'll be messaging my boyfriend like, oh my god, that's so and so is here, and it is bizarre. But I am like that. I don't think there's a way to hide it, like unless you've got to act professional in person or on camera, but then afterwards it's okay to go home and and then freak out.
We've sort of seen that, like, women in football, obviously in the men's game now, is on the rise. Which obviously is good because we sort of need that a little bit. But sort of how important do you find the visibility of women on screen for inspiring the next generation of broadcasters coming through?
Oh, I think it's incredibly important. I think we've seen it more and more now as well. I think, again, social media has a massive part to play in that because it gives people a platform. Even if, they're not broadcasters for a network, you can go and create your own platform and do it that way. I think it's so important, particularly in terms of that, you can kind of create your own opportunities now, which I think is amazing. But in terms of like broadcasts, I know we've got the Women's Rugby World Cup on, at the minute. Seeing so many women working in sport and in the media now is amazing to see. And I think, back when I was growing up, I didn't think it was possible because you'd see the same presenters all the time, like Gabby Logan and like Kelly Cates and the likes of those. So I didn't think there was room for kind of others. But what I've learned over the years is kind of there is room for everyone. Like, it's not like just because one woman has got this job doesn't mean you can't be a part of the industry or and so on. So I think seeing that on TV just makes it, especially when like I'm seeing so many young people coming through and getting those opportunities. And I think networks are changing a lot as well, because like back in the day, I think the likes of BBC were kind of maybe stuck in their ways a little bit. They stuck to what worked and that was it. Like, and that's how it was and it wouldn't change. Whereas now it's all completely changing and it's just the industry's growing as well. And I think digital media has a lot to do with that as well. So I think it's amazing. Like the whole quote, as everyone says, is if you can't see it, you can't be it. Whereas now it's everywhere. And it's nice to see so many women working in women's football and women's sport, but also in men's football and sport as well in general. So I think it's only going to get bigger and bigger as well. And that's why I always say when I see a comment on Facebook from someone being like, oh, here they are again, the women working in men's football. And I'm always like, well, you better get used to it because we're not going anywhere.
I love that.
That's the thing, I think, because obviously social media is clearly, like I say, a big part of, like everyone can create an account, everyone can say anything behind, screen. It feels like it won't affect them. And I think obviously that still provides, obviously, its challenges, when people, women do want to work in media. I mean, what sort of challenges do you still think remain in women that do want to break into football broadcasting?
I think it's always the case of like just trying to prove that you actually know what you're doing, because there's always people that think you're only there to kind of tick a box, or you're only there because they need a woman, on there sort of thing. Whereas I think that's probably a challenge is that sort of side of things. But I guess there comes like that question as well now with like social media, is like there's people who are broadcasters and then there's influencers, and it's like, where does that line starting to blur a little bit, I find.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it makes it harder maybe for people who maybe come in through like a more traditional route of trying to get into like journalism and that side of things. And you see like influencers and followers now seem to kind of like be taken over. So if you've got like the followers, then you're maybe more likely in some industries to kind of get that role. So maybe that could be a challenge in future. Who knows? But I think that's kind of becoming a blurred line at the minute. Is like, are you a broadcaster or are you an influencer? And this kind of becoming conjoined kind of one at the minute, I think. And I think then that could become maybe more difficult for people, particularly like I said, people have gone through that traditional route of studying it. So I think that possibly, who knows how it works, but like I said, there's room for everyone. So and if people know what they're doing, and obviously they're there for a reason.
How do you think we can make sure women's voices are heard in all areas of football, not just obviously on the pitch, whether it be in the job that you're doing at the minute, Gabriella, whether it be like as a physio, just anyone in football?
I think it's just not staying silent. I think for many years women have just stayed quiet just for the sake of like not causing any kind of drama. And I think the important bit as well is having those male allies as well that will kind of speak out for you if they see anything, if there's any sexism or anything said negatively. I think it's important that people just speak up and speak out about it, which I do think is a great thing now. Obviously, social media again could be a great thing for that, but also then the cause of it is usually because of social media.
Yeah.
No, it's like a double-edged sword, isn't it? So, but I think that's we've got to use our voices, and I think as long as you kind of have those allies as well in the industry, whatever industry, I think that's a common thing as well. I think you need those people to kind of have your back, and do so, and just don't be afraid to kind of stick up for yourself as well. I think that's important. And I think having like a Who Game 2, for example,
Yeah.
and organizations like that are doing such incredible work to ensure that there are opportunities for women and girls in sport, and other industries as well. I think is so important to have kind of that backing and that support, and from people, when you've seen so many like players in clubs and getting involved and stuff like that now, I think our voices are always going to be heard from now on, hopefully.
I know you did mention as well, obviously, that you did co-host She Has a Goal in Mind. You did mention a little bit about what inspired you to start that, but what stories have impacted you the most through doing that?
I think with doing She Has a Goal in Mind, it's kind of, so we have women from all areas of sport on there. So whether they are athletes or work behind the scenes, we've had football agents on there, and things like that, and presenters, and I think there's so many stories kind of that do stick out, and I think a lot of people have. I think there's always like a common theme in between them all as well. Everyone has had like those struggles, and it always seems to be a common theme with women in the industry. Being told that you couldn't make it and so on. And we've had plenty of people from overseas on the podcast as well, which has been amazing to see. But those ones, particularly overseas, I think it's much harder in like the likes of America, working in other sports like the NFL and things like that. I think they have still very much male dominated sports, and you probably won't see much change in those as things stand. But the things that they went through working in like sort of the media side, working with the what they call Las Vegas Raiders, and things like that. I can't remember what the story was now, but one of them told us a story about how they weren't allowed to like travel on the team bus because they were a woman, even though they were the media manager at the time and things like that. It makes you just think like, how on earth was that even like real? And, there's so many stories like that stick out to me. And again, like the difficulties that so many women have been through, just trying to get the basics of of to where they are now. But then how much they've overcome to even to be where they are is just incredible. And each and every one of them, I think we've got 4 seasons. I don't know how many episodes you've got now. Like, gosh, got to be close to 40 episodes, I imagine.
Oh, amazing.
Around that. But they've all just had a common kind of theme through them all, which is just goes to show how much women have had to put up with in sport from all angles as well. It's not just broadcasting, it's the behind the scenes as well. There's so many there trying to kind of break down barriers, and they're all so inspirational.
It's funny you say that as well, though, because there's been a reoccurring theme since we've been doing these, obviously, women in football episodes, and it's always that for women, no matter what industry they're in. We had Beth, who obviously was a sports therapist, wasn't she, Ben? We've had Gabby, who works in the social media kind of aspect. We had Nicole from Her Game too, and no matter what they were doing, and what they were doing in the job, they always wanted that second opinion, whoever they were dealing with, because they were a woman.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. And I even get it now, actually, come to think of it. I work a lot in content producing.
Yeah.
And there'll always be a few people that, and I know I can tell straight away that they'll have something to say, regardless, even if I've done a good job. There'll always be a comment about something that that is a kind of irrelevant. They'll have to say something, and just because I'm a woman, I know that's the case, and they'd never admit that, but I know that's the case.
I mean, we see that it does provide a lot of challenges, obviously, like I said, for women going into football and even into sports media as well. But sort of along the way, I guess you've been giving comments and everything of like positivity and maybe what's kept you going. Like, what's sort of the best piece of advice that someone's given you, about being a woman in sports media?
Yeah, on our podcast, we'd always ask at the end what's like the best piece of advice you'd ever been given, and I'd always take every single piece of advice that someone would give. I'd always take it in, and one of them was that there's room for everyone in this industry. So and what's the other one where there's the word that like never let anyone dull your sparkle, but just because someone else is shining doesn't mean like you never will. And there's the other one, like feel the fear and do it anyway. There's another one. There's so much I could probably reel off.
That.
I always take them in because I just love things like that, and yeah, I'd say probably like there's room for everyone in this industry is something I always try and remind myself, because like obviously it is a competitive industry to be in, particularly I think in football media. This is so competitive, even like I said with social media now, that plays a massive part in it. I always try and remind myself, well, this fine, like it's amazing that someone's doing so well, and I always try and cheer others on and things, and then I have to remind myself it's fine, like just because someone else is doing well doesn't mean you're not doing well as well. And there's space for everyone, and I always try and encourage like the next generation coming through as well, and offer advice. And a part of that, I was on the Be Football mentoring course, which is part of the FAW, which is a scheme that they've got going on, which I think is incredible, where you have young women that kind of want to work in football in all areas, and they have mentors, and you kind of mentor them for like a year or half a year. And I love that, because I'm all about kind of bringing the next generation through and supporting others as well. So something I'm really passionate about is supporting the next lot coming through, even though I feel like I'm still quite early on in my career as well. But that, like I said, there's room for us all, so I always try my best and to help others.
Yeah, and I think a big part of how sort of we move forward now, in the next few years with the women's game is supporters, about because there is still, say, a stigma, I think, about women in the game, whether it's players, coaches, or even supporters as well. what do you feel like fans can do to really help push the women's game forward?
Do you know what? The other day I came across a tweet when I was doing squad goals that said like that. I can't remember what team they were supporting, but they'd bought a season ticket for the women's team because they basically said, like I was saying, like the one club, just because it's a women's team, you don't have to treat them as like a separate thing, and if you support your club, you should support kind of all sides of it. And I think that was so amazing. And I loved reading that, the fact that someone had gone out their way and kind of gone to buy a ticket, and they've said that they've loved it because that team was doing so well as the men's. And I think you need to make an effort, I think is the thing as well, and not shut yourself off to kind of it just because it's women playing. Some people for some reason think that they won't enjoy it, when I guarantee you that if you do make an effort to try and watch it, that you will. And my grandfather is probably an example of that as well, because he definitely had the attitude like the women's football wasn't great and so on. But now I'll go to my nan's and my granddad's every Sunday, and he'll have the football on, and it'll be a women's game. And when the Euros was on, he was watching it, and I love it. So, and even with the rugby World Cup on at the minute, he'll voluntarily put it on. So it's like things like that, and he enjoys it, and he knows like the players like Jess Fishlock and all that. So I think people just need to like have an open mind, and I think there's so many fans out there that are doing amazing at promoting the women's game anyway. But I think you just need an open mind, just try it. Like, and if you don't like it, then that's fair enough. You've tried it, isn't it? But I think
Exactly.
I think so many people just shut off, and maybe just don't want to admit as well. I know maybe that's like in front of friends or attitudes of family and things like that. I think that's what fans need to do, is just if you support your club, you should support all the teams. And it's not saying go every single week, but just make an effort to do so.
One thing we did mention, what we're extremely proud of, obviously with the Women in Football series, is we are in partnership with the amazing campaign Her Game Too, which is absolutely incredible. Not only are they trying to tackle sexism in football, but it's gone beyond all sports now. We're on to cricket, hockey, rugby. Obviously, it's gone to Wales, it's gone to France, even in America now, which is absolutely incredible. You can tell I'm a strong advocate and ambassador for it. But from your point of view, what changes and progress has been made since Her Game Too?
Do you know what? I think from my experience, obviously, I'm part of Her Game Too Cymru. I've been an ambassador for a couple of years now. But it's changed so much. It's given so many opportunities to young girls in Wales, and I love going and doing talks to the young girls from schools who love football. And I think in that aspect is like teaching them kind of what is right and what is wrong as well when they experience things, whether that's in football or just in everyday life as well. But to see Her Game Too support so many clubs giving like shirts, kit, things like that, particularly in Wales, is just phenomenal. And to see the support as well that's going on, even on a wider scale. I feel like everyone knows Her Game Too by now. I feel like, and hearing so Amy, who does some of the media for Her Game Too Cymru, when she goes, that's providing her opportunities as well to go and cover the Welsh international team as part of Her Game Too. So it goes beyond just supporting women playing football, or you said it goes on to cricket now and rugby, and it's just phenomenal, I think. And I think sometimes some people don't get maybe the recognition that they deserve, because I know how hard so many ambassadors and and the people that run Her Game Too, how hard they work day in and day out, and it's just phenomenal what's happened over the last few years. And I remember when I first started the podcast, we had Amy on the podcast, like, gosh, it would have been a couple of years back now again. But the growth even since then, and seeing it expand, like you said, to France, to America, seeing it on Football Manager as well, like the logos and things like that.
FIFA as well, they've got the kit, haven't they?
It's just like, it's phenomenal. And it helps so many young girls. And and it's somewhere that people know now where to go if they do experience anything, negative. And I just think it's such an incredible, organisation and the thing to be a part of. I'm really proud as well to be, an ambassador for Hugin to Cymru. And like I said, being able to go into schools and things like that to chat about it and to tell them about all the incredible things that go on and what they can do if they do experience, any negativity is something I'm really proud of. And, even doing those sessions, so, the young girls there, like, they know exactly what sexism and misogyny is from a young age.
Yeah.
And they would say, yeah, I've experienced it in school. And it's just crazy they shouldn't even know what that kind of is. And it's so sad to hear that they have experienced it at a young age. But, it's raising that awareness, isn't it? And knowing that people have a place to go to now, instead of, having to stay silent.
Have you ever experienced any sexism in football yourself, whether it be obviously in work, whether it be in football, on social media as well, which is obviously where a lot of people think they can have a right to say anything negative to a female? And if you have, how did them moments shape you?
Yeah, I definitely say I probably have more often, but I try not to take it in, to be honest with you, as much. But most of it is not quite personal to me, but I'll see it on social media, and then that I think that can affect you just as much as well when you see it.
100%.
When you're in that kind of same environment as someone else. Like I was saying about like the Swans TV stuff, and I had that article in the Sun. It might not have intentionally been trying to be they weren't trying to offend me, I don't think. Well, I hope not. But when that came out, it was just weird. I don't know. It's just a weird feeling to think that just because of like your gender, like that's the thing. Like they would never have done that if it was a male presenter. They would never go online and take a holiday pictures of them and put that in the article. So I always go back to that example because that still sticks with me. Like that's something that really stands out to me. But in terms of like, I think I'm quite lucky that other than that, directly, I've not had anything. Which obviously I'm grateful for, but I know so many others do. And like I was saying on Facebook, when I see the comments that a family member makes, I always now make sure like that I say something back to them about it. And I remember actually when they made a comment, and I think they put a picture up of like 3 pundits that were female. I can't remember what the comment was, but I commented on it, and they came back to me and they were like, "Oh, it's okay because if it's you, it's okay because you're in a family." I'm like, absolutely not. Like you can't pick and choose, So, like I said, I'm quite lucky that I haven't had anything directly to me said on social media. That I haven't seen it if it has been said. I try to not look, but other than that Sun article that came out, luckily I haven't experienced anything else other than people just like you were saying, kind of maybe second guessing what you say, or people are actually getting shocked then that you actually know what you're on about. Because I think you can tell sometimes when people start asking you questions that maybe they're trying to trick you or trip you up. But luckily, I'm in the role because obviously I kind of know what I'm my stuff and what I'm doing. So hopefully I prove people wrong.
It's annoying as well when you go, "Oh, you actually know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
It's like, take that actually out right now. We do know what we're talking about. Just because we've got different body parts to you doesn't mean that we don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, the thing is, like, obviously, Charlotte will know firsthand, from her game too and the work she does with Rochdale. It's making it's the stadiums feel welcoming and everything for for women and girls. And obviously, we've got Rebecca, we've got Dreety as well. Both her game two ambassadors. They do exactly the same. How do you sort of feel like the stadiums and football culture can make football a bit more welcome for women and small girls and everything?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of elements probably. I remember there was a ground, mostly grassroots, I think is the difficult part. I think like the big stadiums, like Premier League and Championship, probably do quite well in terms of like providing facilities for women and things like that. And hopefully by now the environment is a bit more friendlier. Whereas I think grassroots, I think, was predominantly made for men, in terms of changing rooms, and things like that. I think there's not much available for women at the moment in terms of grassroots clubs. But I think there is change happening in that. But in terms of like fans, if you're a fan going to a game, it is really daunting as a woman going, unless you know the people there. I suppose like some fans that have been going for years will know the environment and know the other fans that go, because you have the same seat perhaps every week, and but like if you're a new fan going, I think it's still very much daunting to go as a woman. And I just think it depends really in kind of what sort of game you go into. But I think like in terms of the international ones with Wales, they are very welcoming. In my experience anyway. It's just getting people to change that perception and knowing that like it's not just for men. It is for everyone, and for young kids as well. For example, we took our nephew last 2 weeks ago to the Wales game that was in the Swansea .com stadium, and it was his first ever football game. And it was such a lovely environment to be in as well. So I think there are a lot of changes needed, maybe lower down the leagues, I think. But obviously there is probably, I know, a lot going on in the higher leagues as well, but hopefully people are talking out about it and reporting it as well if it does happen.
I do feel like it is going down the leagues a bit more, because having had the experience, obviously, when my team Maidstone went to Western Supermare last season, I think they had a dedicated fixture for her game too. I think Kaz was there. They had all the the young girls flying the flags now when the teams were coming out. So I do feel like I think you're right. It does need to go, reaching down to the lower leagues, and I think that will come in time.
Yeah.
It's definitely on the
And I
up for
think
sure.
that's where everyone starts, isn't it? It's like that's
Yeah.
where everyone's first experience of football starts, is grassroots football. So if those environments are welcoming from the start, then hopefully, as the young ones grow up, it'll just become normality that everyone's a part of football. I think that's where everything needs to kind of focus, and then hopefully and both ways, the top and the bottom, and then it'll trickle down. Then hopefully, like, I think that's where everyone gains their first perceptions of it as well, isn't it? So I think that's the important bit.
Yeah, I think broadcasts as well, they sort of have a big part to play in that as well, making sure it does filter out, from the top to the bottom. I mean, for broadcasters like yourself, does that, playing change the perception of women in football? Maybe do you think the approach is differently, or is it a case of, look, just be yourself and just let your talent shine through?
I think so. And I think especially these days, I think, again, I will say about the social media side of it. I feel like in the past it's kind of, you had to be a certain way. Whereas now I think personally people's personalities are really, really important in shining through. And I think that's what gets people watching as well. If you relate to that person, or you like the personality, I think that's such an important part. And that's what I always try to do as well. Like, I think in terms of being Welsh as well, I think we're seeing more Welsh people working in general media, whereas before you used to be afraid of using your accent. I feel like everyone used to have a certain accent that worked in football, in media, whereas now we hear in regional accents, which I think is amazing, because that's normal. Because not everyone is posh and speaks that way. That we hear years ago. When you look at old broadcasts, everyone just sounds the same. Whereas now, I think it's beautiful to see and hear so many different people, different accents, just being themselves. And I think that will only grow the game as well. I think, and you again, I think it's all about being relatable. Because I feel like, for example, the what's the channel with the Kate Abdo on, and they cover the Champions League and things like that, and they have Kate Abdo, and they have
CBS.
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they have like Thierry Henry and those on there. I feel like that's such a good one to watch, because like the personalities are just coming out. So I think things like that, I think, are so important these days, particularly again with like social media and the way things are, the landscape's completely changing.
Yeah, I think Charlotte definitely doesn't beat around the bush. She lets her accent shine through with her passion for two names, and
I love
we love
it.
it. That's the thing.
Honestly, we have an ongoing joke with the people who come into our live shows in the chat because I'm really, really northern. I don't pronounce my H's, so half the time when I'm supposed to say like Hemel, Hempstead, I call them Emil, Hempstead.
Yeah.
And it's like a reoccurring thing now. It's like when people say Bolton, I say Bolton, and it's got to a point now where everybody in the chat, and they love it, to be fair, but they banter me all the time. But I can't shy away from this broad northern accent.
No, don't. I love it. It's I think again, it's just normal, isn't it? It's like everyone is not the same, so I think we should celebrate that. And especially like I'm saying, like with a South Wales accent, people always say to me, "Where are you from?" Like with our accent, I'm like, "Oh gosh, here we go." But it's so refreshing, I think, now to on radio to hear so many different accents, and I love it. And I think you should be so proud of that.
Do you know what? Tomorrow, when y'all come at me in the chat in the live show, I'm going to be like, I can't even say it's you, Bo, because then I'll announce our special guest. But in the future, I'll be like, well, Gabriella Jukes said that she really likes my accent. So back off, everyone.
Yeah, I do, definitely.
I'll just have to try and not do it tomorrow because then I'll give away our special guest.
We can just tee it up then for the show.
Exactly. This is a question that I really love asking everybody that's been on, but I'm going to put two questions into it. So, what advice would you give to any woman or female wanting to get into football, no matter what job role or whether it's playing or being a fan? What would it be? And also, what advice would you give to your younger self?
I think in terms of women wanting to get into football, I would just say to just believe in yourself, and you can do it. Like there's nothing stopping you, and I think the only person stopping you is yourself. So and no matter, I always say, no matter where you come from, what your background is, how you grew up and everything like that, I think all that kind of makes you you, and you can do it no matter what. I come from Port Talbot, which is a small industrial town just in South Wales, and and in the past it's kind of had like bad reputation because we have the steelworks and things like that. And I feel like even growing up, I probably thought, well, I'm not going to get anywhere because this is where I'm from. I speak like this, and so on. I think you can really achieve it if it's something you really want to do. There's no reason why you can't do it, and I think it's speaking to people, making those connections are really important as well. And I always say, like, if anyone was like listening, just drop me a message, or if you want any advice. I feel like most people are really friendly and helpful and will be willing to help as well. So if there's someone you do look up to, or just give them a message, and if they don't reply, they don't reply, but at least you've tried. I think that's the important thing. And there's a lot of ways now you can create your own opportunities as well, as I was saying, like with social media, and you see so many young girls doing that, creating their own little platforms, and doing so well as well. Amazing. Like at that young age, I don't think I could do what half of them are doing. But that's what I would say, is also to say yes to every opportunity, because you never know what can come of it, or who you'll meet. Whether it's, it might not be like your dream role at that time, but you never know where that could kind of lead to. So I always say yes to absolutely everything, no matter what, and try and fit it in regardless, because again, I never know where I could take you. And in terms of my younger self, probably would kind of like, I'd probably say just believe in yourself that you can do it. Because like I was saying, I knew growing up that I wanted to work in sport media, but just thought that wasn't something that was attainable to me. Probably again because of where I came from, and my background, and things like that. I didn't think that was possible. And one of the things, actually, because I thought you had to be a good writer to work in sports media, and that was absolutely not me. So I just thought, oh, well, I'm not going to do a sports journalism course because I'm not a writer and things like that. And I wish that I did it sooner, probably. My younger self, I would say, just to go for that, and see where it takes you. But also, again, I think I wouldn't change anything because it's kind of all worked out and led to where I am now as well. But probably would be just probably a cliche, but to believe in yourself that you can do it. And hopefully my younger self is proud to see where I've kind of got to now, you know, because I was so shy growing up. I never thought I'd be working like as a presenter, speaking to people, presenting, you know, events in front of rooms full of like hundreds of people. But thankfully, I kind of, you know, took my gut feeling and went and did that masters back in 2020. Otherwise, I don't know where I would be now if I didn't.
So we've talked about the past, we've talked about the present. Looking ahead to the future now of the women's game, what's sort of exciting you most about the future, you know, for Wales and I guess across the UK in general for our game?
I just think there's no stopping it. Like now, you know, and you're seeing like the visibility of it, so many broadcasters getting involved, people funding it and really investing. And I think that's the important bit is people are investing in it. And in Wales, like we've seen such a growth. For example, actually, in Wales, the women's leagues, some of the attendances are bigger than the men's Welsh leagues. Things like that. You know, people are really taking an interest in it, which is incredible, and it can only get bigger and bigger, obviously. And with the national side, you know, that qualification to the first major tournament, that's only going to trickle down, you know, into the grassroots. And I'm so excited. I feel like that was just only the start, you know. For a lot of players, it might have been like the end of their career and things like that, but they did so much, to, you know, over the years to kind of help get to that point. It can only kind of go up from here, I think, and hopefully qualify, you know, for the next tournament, and it's not going to end there. And I just, yeah, it's just it's so exciting to see, you know, where things are going to go. You know, obviously it's unpredictable, really, but we know that it's not going to stop. And you know, for all those young girls to get the opportunity to play football now and to have, you know, someone to look up to, growing up as well. I think that's just incredible. Something, you know, I don't know if you relate that as well, Charlotte. Like something you wish you had when you were growing up.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned before, it's you just want to get it to a point where it's normal. It's like on my little boys' football team, they have young girls playing on that football team as well, and they don't see any different at all. Those young boys, like they treat the girls as one of their own. It's not like, oh, man of the match and all that. It's like, yay, such a body's one player of the match, and it's just so refreshing. And they're the first to go over and like have her back and protect her if they need to. But that's the sort of stuff that I love seeing. And I've said it a couple of times as well in the previous episodes. But my little boy Bobby is 10 and he absolutely loves Ella Toon. So you'll ask him who his favourite footballers are. He'll obviously mention a Dale player because I've drawn it into him that he has to say a Rochdale player first. But then he'll say, oh, and I love Cunha and I love Ella Toon. And it's not even to the point where you have to say who's your favourite men's player and who's your favourite female player. In his top three, Ella Toon always gets a mention. And it's so sweet.
No, I love that. And actually the other day when we did the awards, Helen Ward, who was there. So she was talking about her young boy who had a birthday and he asked for a Jess Fishlock away shirt for his birthday. You know, and that's just like just normal now, which is amazing to see. And even when I was out in the Euros, we were interviewing a lot of Welsh fans, and there was a young boy who was talking about how amazing Jess Fishlock is, and that's like, you know, the impact those players have now had on, you know, a new generation, both young boys and girls, is amazing. And I think that's what's going to grow it, isn't it? Like you said, it's going to be normal, and who knows where it will take it, you know, in the future. But it's just really exciting.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the fact that, you know, there's still a market that really hasn't been touched as much as it should have done, you know, for women's football. And I think you've seen that a lot more. I mean, the big thing for me, which I found quite refreshing, was the whole Welcome to Wrexham documentary, where they covered a lot about the women's team, you know, and I think now they're getting big crowds. They had like nearly 8,000-9,000 I think at one time, you know, for game.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Their level is just unheard of. I mean, what do you sort of, because I mean, when you see things like that, what's sort of like the biggest opportunity for growth in women's football in Wales specifically?
Yeah, I think, like I was saying, like with Wales now getting that qualification to first major tournament, I think that opens up so many doors now because people have seen it happen. They've seen Wales on an international stage, and then now we've got, like I say, we've got the Welsh leagues in Wales. We've got the Adran leagues, which has like Wrexham in the Premier League, then say of the women's football in Cardiff and Swansea, and you know, to have those teams kind of like Cardiff part of the men's club and Wrexham a part of the men's club and Swansea and so on, you know, that opens up so many opportunities for like sponsorship, investment, and like I was saying, the women's football is growing even further than the men's. I remember working at the Welsh Cup final in the summer. The women's turnout was way higher than the men's, and I just think that's absolutely crazy to even think that was, you know, that was possible. But it's just goes to show that, you know, like I was saying, like if you see you can be it, and now we've seen the women's team there at that level, competing at the highest level. They were in like, you know, League A of the Nations League as well, and things like that. And it's providing that opportunity for these players that are playing in Wales to hopefully show that there's a pathway as well. Like it's not just playing football now for a club and that's it. There's actually a route to becoming professional, which I think is incredible. And who would have thought, you know, in such a small amount of time that would happen, that it's a job now, isn't it? So like, I think a player that does really well with kind of where she is Fionn Morgan, that plays for Wales, and she also is now playing for West Ham. She uses kind of her social media to create a brand for herself. And I'm not sure if you would have seen her social videos, but she shows like the day in the life of a footballer. And she's got a massive following now across social media. And I think that's something that women's sport does really well, is using the likes of like TikTok, in Instagram, and we've seen it across sports as well. Like Ilona Maher, who's the rugby player for the USA, she's like become the most followed rugby player, male or female, in the world. So, and she's created that brand for herself. So I think the female players are now seeing an opportunity where they can create that for themselves. So then it makes companies kind of invest in them as players rather than like the team, if that makes sense, which I think is important, because then the team feeds off that. The team will then get support because people are going to watch that player, but it kind of helps, you know, the overall picture then, which I think is something that's different to the men's game, that the women's like players and things seem to be doing really, really well, is taking advantage of that.
One thing that I find really, really amazing as well is obviously in the women's game, we do see a lot of obviously male advocates and a lot of male personalities that are strong in the game. I know it was such sad news when we obviously lost Matt Beard. What an incredible personality he was, and what amazing things he did for women's football. We obviously have the likes of Ian Wright as well, who I think is just key, and someone who he loves football, no matter if it's a male game, the women's game. He's so passionate. And even, I know he's like Marmite as well, but even the likes of Bruno Fernandes, every time I see a post about Manchester United women, Bruno Fernandes is obviously Manchester United's captain, and he's so supportive of the Manchester United women's teams. Do you see more collaborations in the future with obviously the male and the women's teams?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's the case, because like I was saying, like it's the same club regardless, isn't it? It doesn't matter if it's the women's or the men's. You're the same club. So I don't see why not. And I think it'd only benefit both teams. Obviously, we know like the men's teams have like all this sponsorship and there's way more money and kind of that side of stuff. But you know, like you were saying in terms of Bruno Fernandes there, it just takes 2 seconds to support a post across social media and things like that. So I don't see why that shouldn't be a given, really. That should be something that happens, you know, support each other. And I think, I'm sure it was Declan Rice was another player that's really supportive. And, you know, it's great to have, again, those male allies. And that goes a long way, doesn't it? You know, and, you know, there may be fans of Declan Rice or you know, whatever teams that they play for that are hearing that. And young boys, again, hearing that. So that's only like a positive thing. So I'd hope to see more collaboration in future. But then again, it comes down to like the ownerships and stuff of clubs as well, and money and all sides of it, because not all women's teams are lucky enough to have supportive owners and things. Because I mean, even with Man United, we've seen that the ownership perhaps isn't too good to the women's teams.
No.
But hopefully that will change, and I'd hope that players voice that as well, to try and show that they want to support the women's side as well.
I'm fast forwarding the future now 10 years. A very long time. So if you could fast forward to 10 years, what would you love to see for women's football coverage and representation?
I would just love to see that it's a normality, and that it's as mainstream as the men's is, which I feel like broadcasting recently, like in recent years, is doing so well. Like when we've seen with the Euros, it was on everywhere, which is fantastic. So I hope it just continues in that kind of trajectory. And there's no discussion about, oh, here we go, there's a woman on a men's game again. I feel like I just hope that it's just that's how it is, and then it just becomes normal. So I'm hopeful that in 10 years it would be that way. And who knows, women's football is going, like I said, growing and growing. It's only going to get bigger. So I'd hope that in 10 years' time, and again with the young boys and young girls growing, that in 10 years' time, maybe like 20 years old, they will kind of bring that positivity through, and that's how they were brought up. So I'm hoping that would be the case.
And keeping it sort of in that same bracket, if you like, of 10 years, what kind of stories you hope to be telling in that, in the women's game?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'd hope that by 10 years' time, we won't be still talking about how women don't have the same opportunities, and women are still getting that. Like I remember, like I was saying in the Together Stronger documentary we were doing on the women's team, how they weren't even training on like similar facilities, and the men's team would always come first when it came to training. They would get the first dibs on the training ground and things like that. I'd hope that by then that wouldn't even be a thought. Women's football would be kind of not an afterthought, as it often has been kind of over the years. And yeah, I think rather than saying like what stories you'd like to tell, I think it'd be the ones that we hope that we've forgotten about, kind of, actually not forgotten about, kind of where they've come from, because I think that's really important to remember. But it wouldn't be so prominent about the disadvantages that the women have had in the sport, and I'd hope that would be the case, that we're just talking about the successes and and things like that, and that like the young players now in like the national sides, they probably have grown up in a completely different way to some of the senior players, where they literally had nothing, whereas these now are coming through in a professional era. So to be honest, it'd be exciting to see what kind of stories you'd be able to tell in that many years' time, and hopefully Wales would be at a World Cup, Wales women by then. Actually, in 10 years' time, isn't it being held in the UK? So
yeah, I'm pretty sure it is.
Hopefully Wales will be there then.
Oh. And finally, we've got some quick fire fun questions.
Okay.
So the first one, favorite match you've ever covered? I mean, this will be a tough one, I reckon.
It is a tough one, but I'd have to say Wales qualifying for the World Cup would be up there, because there wasn't a dry eye in the stadium, I don't think, after that, and that would be one that I'd always kind of stick in the memory.
Favourite stadium you've ever worked in?
Oh, that's a tough one. Favourite stadium I've ever worked in? Probably the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. Not so much for a football match, but in terms of like rugby and the general atmosphere in that stadium, I don't think anything beats that.
A women's footballer you think deserves more recognition?
I'm going to say Sophie Ingle, because again, she's such has a quiet personality, but she has done so much for the game, both club and country, and I think she doesn't take the recognition herself. I don't think. I think she definitely deserves it.
A player past or present, you'd love to interview and why? It can be a male or a female player.
I'm gonna go for a male player, and it's probably a cliche again, but Gareth Bale.
Yeah, great
I would
choice.
definitely love to. Yeah, that would be it, I think.
Have you got a pre-match ritual or superstition when you're presenting live?
I don't think. Oh, not one that's obvious to me. I'm very much, I know this is not a quick fire answer now, but I'm very
That's
much
fine.
someone who works better under pressure. So I'm always before a game cramming everything in, I'd say. I don't know if that's a ritual, but that's something I always do. I think it's just
Yeah.
how I work. But probably that, because I feel like if I do that, it all kind of sticks in my head better.
Love that.
Dream sporting event you'd like to host or report on?
I'd love to work at the Olympics one time. If that will ever happen, who knows? But that's something I'd love to work on.
One sport you'd like to cover outside of football?
I would like to say athletics. Keeping in with that Olympics theme. I played athletics. I did athletics growing up. I was a runner. So that's something that was always a highlight that that I really wanted to do, is to work at the Olympics and to hopefully work on the athletics.
This question just sums me up to a T. Go-to snack or drink on a busy match day?
Oh, I love my snacks. Everyone who knows me knows that I'll have a snack in my bag of some sort. I can't go anywhere without them. Do you know what? I love a pepperami.
Good shout. Which ones? The normal or the really hot ones?
Just the normal ones. I can't do
Normal.
spicy, but I do love, like if I'm passing a petrol station or anything,
Yeah.
I'm like, have a pepperami.
Love that. If you could swap jobs with anyone in football for a day, who would it be?
Oh, that's interesting. Who would I swap jobs with? Oh, I'd love to be a football manager for the day.
That.
Yeah, maybe Craig Bellamy at the moment,
Love that.
just to see, what that pressure is actually like as a football manager on that level.
I feel like as well, with all the quotes that you gave us tonight, you'd be such an inspiration in that dressing room to them.
I'll just be reading them all off.
Emma Hayes guide. Emma Hayes
Yeah.
guide.
Definitely, that'll be it.
Honestly, thank you so much for giving up your time. It's been such an incredible episode, and I've said it numerous times, but we were so excited when you agreed to come on here, because you're someone that a lot of us, male and female, look up to on this podcast. So thank you so much for giving up your time.
No, my absolute pleasure. Thank you for asking me. It's such an honour to be on here, and thank you for the kind words as well. That's so lovely. But yeah, thank you. I've really enjoyed. It's been lovely to chat to you, and I'm usually the one interviewing people, so to be on the other side is a bit strange. I talk about myself, but no, thank you so much. I really appreciate you asking me on.
Thank you. If anybody does want to keep up with your incredible work, where can they find you on the socials?
So my socials might be on the screen there, actually. At Gabriella Jukes would be my Instagram, and I think my Twitter or X is the same. And everywhere, I think it's the same everywhere, to be honest. I think it's at Gabriella Jukes, but usually Instagram is where I post most of my stuff.
And also, everybody, if you haven't listened to it, please go and check out Squad Goals. As I've mentioned, I highly rate it. Like, it's absolutely incredible, and it just crack me up every single time, no matter what. So everybody, please go and listen.
Oh, thank you for that. Yeah, definitely. It's a bit of fun on a Saturday, covering all the leagues, and we always love fan interaction as well. So make sure you write into us as well, and I'll be giving you a shout out on air. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Ben, you've been my amazing co-host tonight. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Ben Stones FC1 on Twitter. Looking forward to seeing our goal of the month for Maidstone. Oh wait, we didn't score one, did we? So, yeah. So if you want to find me being miserable on Twitter, that's the place to find me.
And if anybody does want to check me out on the socials, I am SharXREFC on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. My Her Game 2 stuff as well is Rochdale HGT on all of those socials. And of course, the main ones, We are the Absolute Football Podcast, and we did win Best New Content Creator at the Football Content Awards. We can milk it till November, and I just wanted to thank each and every person that has nominated us again. We are up for 2 more awards this year, which is incredible. Best Content Creator and Best in Non-League. So if anybody did want to vote for us, you can check that out on the Football Content Awards website. But we do have 4 live shows a week. On a Monday, we are Absolutely Non-League with myself, Ben, and the rest of the team in collaboration with NL Fulltime. We cover National League North, National League South. On a Tuesday, Sam and the team cover all things Premier League on Absolutely Premier League show. On a Wednesday, we have Freya and Team Chaos. They are Absolutely Women's Football show where they cover WSL and WSL2. And of course, you can catch me again on a Thursday with the Rowdy Rabble, where we cover all things EFL from the Championship, League One and League Two. You can catch us on Twitter. We are Absolute Football Pod, YouTube and Twitch, Absolute Football Podcast, TikTok, Absolute Football Pod, Instagram, Absolute Football Podcast _, Blue Skies, Absolute Football, and on Facebook, we are the Absolute Football Podcast. Thank you to each and every person as well that has supported our Women in Football series. We've honestly absolutely loved doing it. Hope you all have a lovely weekend, and ta-ta for now.